Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So today's video we are looking at Creative Stamping issue 107. So this month's free gift is designed by Crafter's Companion and this is called French Chic. As always an A4 stamp set, and it's kind of separated into kind of two different styles. So this top one we have got some very vintage looking things. So we've got this beautiful big rose stamp here, we've got the Paris stamps here, we've got the Eiffel Tower, we've got some lovely sentiments and you know, just some lovely things that you can build up backgrounds with, and that's what I'm going to be doing in today's card, is sort of using some of these for the background. And then at the bottom we have kind of more of that chic shopping type of experience. So we've got the Paris skyline here, we've got a shop front as well, so you can create a little scene. You've got the little table and chairs there, but we've got the macaroons, you've got the pretty dress, the lipstick, the handbag and the shoes, we've got the present, and again just some little sentiments in there. So a really great set to kind of give you the best of both worlds in terms of anything sort of French themed. So that is our free gift. Let's take a little look kind of in the magazine at some of the inspiration for what you can do with this set. So again, this is then about building up your backgrounds, your layers and things. Again, that's what I'm going to be kind of doing with this. You've got how to create a collage background from tissue paper, so that's interesting. So you've got the different elements in that background. You've got a bit of like ink smishing and things with that lovely rose that's been cut into and a sentiment. We've got creating an oval scalloped edge nesting card here, again with that very pretty dress. You've got, you know, the shop front and things, a very beautiful colour palette in here as well, again with those big roses, and these all being fussy cut. It does actually come with an embossing folder. I'm not sure where my embossing folder has ended up. So here is that embossing folder. I completely forgot all about it. Everything is kind of a little bit of a mess in my room at the moment. So you've got here an A6 embossing folder, and you've got those flowers in there with that kind of script writing in the background, almost like a postcard. So you've got a little bit of that going on in the background here, and again just layering all these lovely things up. Then we've got techniques using the embossing folder. So to create an embossed and standard background, again with a little bit of ink smishing in there, some lovely colours in here. Things like this, you know, not having to colour everything in, but just adding a little bit of a highlight using a particular colour. So this is just using pink. So it's very much kind of just pink highlights in there. That's very nice. If you're kind of strapped for time and you don't want to spend too much time colouring, you know, it doesn't always have to be overly realistic. The same thing there, again just using a pink just to add sort of some highlights and things in there. So let's take a look at what comes included in next month's issue. So this set, you've got a little bit from Indigo Blue in here, but this is Royal Jubilee. You've got a 37-piece stamp set in here, and you also get a 3-in-1 Regal background stencil as well. So this very much reminds me of the Best of British. I can't remember what issue that was, but that was the very first Creative Stamping magazine that I subscribed to. And yeah, that had all British, so that stamp set would work really well with this one as well, I think. But you've got sort of cards and things in there. You have got a suit of armour, you've got the Union Jack and the teddy bear, and again then with that stencil, perfect if you're creating any kind of decorations for the Queen's Jubilee this year. So that was a look in the magazine itself, and then the free gift, not forgetting that A6 embossing folder. So let's get into creating our card today using this issue of Creative Stamping. So for my card today, I'm going to create an A5 by 7 inch card. I'm going to try and use as many of these elements as possible. So the first thing I'm doing is just stamping out some of the really beautiful images you can see here. We've got the dress, the shoe, the lipstick, and those presents. I'm stamping this onto some smooth cardstock. This is perfect for colouring. I think this is by the Hunky Dory. This is their stamping card. And I've just stamped that in some Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm going to use my alcohol markers later on in this video. I wasn't really sure where I wanted to start, but I figured I was going to create a background using some of these images, but I decided to create more of a mixed media background. So even though I've stamped these, I'm going to cut myself a piece of watercolour cardstock. This is by Sentimentally Yours, and I love this cardstock. I haven't had any problems with it, and I think it is perfect for, you know, all sorts of watercolouring. I'm going to cut this panel down to about 5 by 7, and I'm going to create my background, and then I can trim this down at the end before we start putting our card together. And I'm going to bring out my messy mat here because I am going to get messy. We're going to do some ink smushing with some Distress Oxides. We're going to use some texture paste and really kind of build up a lovely mixed media kind of chic style background. So I've got 3 colours of Distress Oxide. I've got Tattered Rose, Milled Lavender and Worn Lipstick. And I'm using my messy mat because I prefer how this beads the ink up rather than on a surface like a glass mat where it has kind of a different effect on it. And I wanted to create a kind of base layer. So I'm first of all using the Tattered Rose just to give me, like I said, that sort of base colour that I wanted. It's going to be kind of antique-y with these pinks and things. It's quite different, a different kind of card. I really love how it turned out though. And to me, it does kind of scream that French chic kind of distressed kind of look. So I'm gonna just try and pat this away. I don't want sort of too much colour on here because I'm going to bring in some of those other colours as well. And so I'm just going to use my heat tool just to dry this down, and then I can begin sort of stamping onto this. So I didn't want to use black. I was trying to use something a little bit more subtle. So I brought out my Prism Walls of Colour ink pads, and I used the mushroom colour. Now, I don't often pull out these kind of colours, especially this one, but it actually worked so well for what I was trying to create here. So I've taken some of these stamps from the sort of top section of our free stamp set. So we've got these lovely swirls, we've got the Eiffel Tower, we've got the postage stamps on here. And again, so I'm stamping them in this mushroom. I think it's wild mushroom it's called. I'm stamping this just over that background, and doesn't this work so perfectly with that Tattered Rose colour? I think it's perfect. So originally I was planning to do a portrait style card, but I actually turned it into a landscape in the end, just from where I did use some of that texture paste and I ended up covering the areas where I didn't with that rose, so it just turned into a landscape instead. So I'm just kind of trying to build this up. So next I'm going to stamp the Eiffel Tower again in that same mushroom colour, and I'm going to end up spritzing some water on this. So I'm just going to make it a little bit more kind of loose and things. I'm not really too fussed about where I'm kind of stamping things because again with this you're creating layers. Some of this is going to get covered up by different colours in there, again that texture paste and things like that. I did try to bring in a slightly different colour, so I brought in this real light, real pale grey colour, but you couldn't really see it sort of standing out at all. I wanted to create just a little bit more depth, so I did stamp a bunch of this. In real life you could kind of see it, but it didn't stand out massively. But I thought I'll stamp it up again just to add a few more layers in there, but I do go back in again with that wild mushroom colour just to kind of bring this up a little bit. And I did do a little bit of kind of second generation stamping with one of the Distress inks as well. I think this was the Walnut Stain, I believe it was one of the darker ones. That's why I'm just stamping off to the side just to again tie it all in so you don't have tons of darker colours in there kind of overpowering sort of everything else. So again, off then screen, I did then just spritz it with my water spritzer, and you can certainly that top stamp, you can see it beginning to run just a little bit. And I'm just going to use a paper towel then just to pick this up. Again, some of this is hidden, so I'm not too worried about how this is looking at this time because, you know, to me this is looking like a hot mess. But again, when you just start adding in those layers and you can just see bits and pieces from the background, I think it comes together quite nicely. So I'm going to stamp the Eiffel Tower one more time before I move on to using then my texture paste. Again, just because that other one sort of faded away a little bit. So this is a stencil. It came from one of the packs I picked up from the Works. They do sort of packs of 5 or 6 stencils together. And I was going to pick a different one actually. And then I spotted this one at the last moment. And I thought, do you know what? The roses, and that is going to go perfect with this stamp set. So I'm just going to tape my panel onto this. So I'm just using some low tack tape here. And I'm going to take my Distress texture paste. This is the Crackle. I haven't used this in a little while. And I really wanted to you know, start using some more of my products. So I'm going to take my Nuvo spatula and I'm just going to run this through the stencil. So I'm not being particularly careful here. I'm not interested necessarily in an even coverage here. I wanted some areas to be slightly thinner, some to be thicker, and it just gives you then different types of crackle. That's what I found anyway. So this is only a 6x6 inch stencil, and you can see obviously my card base this panel, sorry, is 5x7 roughly. So I've only got it on that bottom section. That's when I decided to turn it into a landscape, and then just cover up that portion where I hadn't didn't have that texture paste. And then before I do anything, I'm just going to go ahead and clean this off, because this will kind of dry solid onto your equipment, onto your stencils and your tools. I did dry this off with my heat tool as well as letting it dry, and you do get that lovely kind of crackling effect on there. But I wanted to then add a little bit more colour into those areas of that crackle paste. So I then laid down some milled lavender onto my mat, and you can see I'm just doing some ink smushing here again, just to kind of build up those layers, add in that extra colour. And I do it a couple of times where then, you know, I'm using a little bit more water, a little bit less water, just to get it a touch more kind of concentrated. So you can see that milled lavender on there. That tattered rose really has turned into more of a sort of an ivory, more into a sort of like an antique linen kind of colour, rather than being anything more pinky. That's why I wanted to bring in then this lavender colour, because I wanted to give it just that little pop of sort of feminine again. And again, I just let that dry, use my heat tool as well. I'm a little bit impatient, so I like to dry things with my heat gun. And you've got some lovely kind of speckles in there. You can see how well that colour kind of comes together with that tattered rose background. So that's all I'm going to do for this background. I'm happy where it is, and I don't really want to sort of push it too much further. So I'm going to move on to adding a few more elements, you know, to cut out and pop on. So I'm going to take this really lovely rose with the leaves. I'm going to stamp this again onto a piece of watercolour cardstock. I'm using the VersaFine Onyx Black ink for this, because I'm going to do, again, a little bit of ink smushing. So I really didn't want to spend too much time colouring this in. I wanted something that was going to work nicely with the background. So I'm gonna, like I said, do a little bit of ink smushing with the worn lipstick. So I did use some clear embossing powder to coat this image, and I'm just melting it here with my heat tool, just because I wanted the colours to kind of pool in some of those areas. So I'm just going to cut this down just so I don't waste sort of the rest of the cardstock here. And then again, like I said, we're going to go in so actually I think I used tattered rose first. Actually, I was trying to build up a little bit of colour, but it didn't really add anything to it. Yeah, so this is the tattered rose colour, but again, then by the time I bring in that worn lipstick, like I said, it really didn't kind of change things too much, didn't add those layers like I wanted it to. But again, I'm still going for something very kind of rustic here to match in with our background. So I'm not worried about getting every single bit of this rose kind of covered. If you wanted to do that, the best way of getting that colour to kind of move around your paper is to spritz it with some water beforehand. That'll kind of you know, begin that process of getting that ink moved around. But I'm really happy with how this kind of came out. Like I said, I wasn't looking to cover every single area really, and some of that colour did get onto the ink. When I add a little bit of green onto here, it does kind of, it muddies it just a little bit, but again, I'm quite happy with how this came out. So I'm going to take the peeled paint, Distress Oxide Peel Paint colour, and just one of my little finger daubers that I've got, and I'm just going to kind of go and fill in those sort of green areas. I wanted to bring in a little bit of green, and you know, I can layer this on top. Yes, okay, it does muddy the colour a little bit because you're layering it up, but this does layer nicely onto that ink smushed you know, background that we've got going on. So, you know, you can sort of layer these things up. If you're going for a mixed media look, you can yourself just bring this up. And then if you do use any distress inks, or any inks generally really, on top of embossing powder, you can then just wipe it off. There will be a little bit of ink that's sat on top of your heat embossed lines. If you just wipe it with a clean cloth, you can usually bring that colour back a little bit and just take off any remaining ink. So I'm just going to fussy cut around this, and then I can begin to kind of bring together my elements. So It does tidy up quite nicely by the time you do cut this out. I do just leave sort of a really small border, so you don't have that white border in a lot of areas. But again, it just sort of, it adds to the look of this kind of mixed media style background. So I'm going to trim my panel down in a second. So again, I'm just trying to work out how I want this to sit. And again, I felt then the best place for it was to sit it over the area where I hadn't done any of that texture paste, hadn't added any texture paste. But now I'm just going to trim this down on all edges, just so then, you know, all edges are kind of clean to begin with. And again, this is going to be on a 5x7 inch card. So I cut this down. It was 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. I had to think about there for a second. But I decided then to distress the edges. So I'm just going to take this little hand distressing tool just to kind of you know, mess up those edges, because again I thought that would look nice. And I'm going to put this onto a craft 5x7 card base, and I think this just works really nicely to kind of bring everything together. So again, if you're going for that look, you know, you can very easily go for that full look. The brown that's in the background goes nicely with that craft card base. And sometimes I find it difficult to know when I want to use a craft card base. So I don't always use it. I've got, you know, packs of the 5x7 and the 6x6, but I don't use them too much. And I really want to start using them a little bit more. But I think you've got to have the right kind of project to put it onto a craft card base. But anyway, so I'm putting some foam tape onto the back of this panel. This is going to help keep it nice and flat, because obviously we've used our heat tool on it, we've used the texture paste, we've used water on it. It's going to get a little bit warped. And then I'm just trying to rough up this rose a little bit as well, again, just to add to that look. I'm actually just going to use some glue on this rather than the foam, because I want to add foam to the other elements and our sentiment as well. If you are sticking this down on top of your texture paste and things, you might want to add just a little bit more glue just to help that adhere down. So the other elements that we've got, again, was from what I stamped at the beginning. I am only going to use the dress, the shoe and that lipstick, and I'm just going to colour these in with my Copic sketch markers. So I really love colouring in clothes. I don't really do it that much. I don't really have any stamps you know, of clothes and fashion things, but I do really love colouring these in. So I'm just going to take more of a kind of darker lilac, I guess it would be. So I think I'm using the V22, 25 and 28 here, and I really love how this dress came out. I was going to add a little bit more detail because you do have the flowers actually on the dress. I was going to add some little bits and pieces to that as well. I thought maybe adding some glue and then adding some glitter on it. That would look really beautiful, and it would help kind of make it stand out and sparkle a little bit more. I thought that would be good, but I've just sort of left it as it is, to be honest. Then I coloured in the lipstick. So again, just going with a pink shade. So I think here I used RV11 and RV13, and then I just used the ice grey blend from my Tri-Blend markers just for the sort of packaging itself. And then the shoe, I decided to go with kind of a green shoe just to add another little bit of colour, tie that in then with the green leaves. And I think I coloured those in, that was G40, G43 and 46, I believe it was. And then I just did that same pink up for the bow on the back. And then I was trying to work out what sentiment I wanted, and they've got this lovely happy birthday wishes sentiment here, which I do really love. And I'm going to stamp this onto some white cards, and I'm going to stamp this then in the worn lipstick colour just to help tie that in. So I did fussy cut around my sentiment, and then I did add just a little bit of tattered rose over the top just so it wasn't so stark white. Then putting the card together, I'm going to pop some foam onto the back of this dress just to help it stand out from the card. And then I'm just simply going to glue down our lipstick and the shoe just kind of behind this dress. Of how this dress came out. It's not obviously my usual style. I don't dabble into mixed media too much, but it is nice, especially when you have a stamp set that has a lot of images in there. It's nice to kind of try to use them all as much as possible, and then without making too much of a busy card. Things like this, layers, and that is a really great way of sort of being able to use them and just build it up nicely. But yeah, like I said, I don't make too much mixed media, but I do always enjoy the process of it. So that is going to be my card finish today. This card is going to be going on sale over on my Etsy shop, and there is a link in the description box down below so you can go and check that out. If you do like this card, then please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed already. So that is our finished card using this French Chic stamp set from Creative Stampin'. I think this was issue 107. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.